Welcome back to another episode of Marketing Management and Money. I am your host, Ryan Owens.
And I am your host, Ryan Murray.
Thank you for joining us. We are excited to have you with us today as we look at how boring successful business can be.
Wow, what a way to kick it off.
Right?
Well, it's true.
Right. We've talked about this a little bit where and I think that entrepreneurs they shy away from big businesses, like working within corporations or working up the corporate ladder. Mm-hmm. You see this all the time. People just shedding the ranks of corporate business to start or run or whatever their own venture, mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
I myself had this same experience where I worked for a very large financial corporation, and it was terrible. Like, it was a slow death and a very enduring death every time I walked in that building. It was horrendous. I hated it.
Uh-huh.
And that's kind of the, where this episode is going to lead us, is that there's a reason why we're all entrepreneurs, right? Where we're striving to start something new or get into something that we are passionate about, because successful business, especially like these big corporations, they have their systems in place. They've already got their structure laid out. They know exactly how much they're paying for this position and what they expect this position to do. And that's all they have to do. They don't have to go above and beyond or figure out anything new. There's no new problems to solve. Really, it's
mechanization makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Once you get that level of efficiency down, then that's it.
So I remember when I was quite young, early 20s, and I think I was either 21 or 22. Anyway, I started working in food service, and I'll tell you what, if you want to work really, really hard and not make a lot of money, there's a space for you in food service. Like, it was tough work, and they hired me. A pretty big company, in fact, a very large company, a worldwide company, and they hired me as a front of the house manager. And okay. I'm just thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm front of the house manager, and I kind of had my eyes on becoming the general manager, mm-hmm. and working my way through the ranks. And so I was trying to do a good job and make a good impression and all this kind of stuff. And
show your ambition.
Yeah, and
like a lot of budding entrepreneurs or people that have that in them that start out.
Yeah. And so, we had this district manager, and he would oversee several of these locations. And I thought, I'm like, whoa, I mean, that's awesome. And so, when they brought me on, they were having a lot of problems. This was their problem child in the entire district, and we were working on cleaning it up. And so I actually spent a decent amount of time with the district manager, just kind of talking about things that he wanted to see happen and all this kind of stuff. And so one day, he pulls me aside and he says, "Hey, I just want to let you know that I've decided to step down as district manager." I'm just like, whoa, and here I am, young kid, early 20s, not a lot of experience. And so this is kind of the first time that I've seen this happen, right? And he's like, I've decided to step down. And I'm like, so what are you going to go do? He's like, I'm going to open up a little bistro.
Nah.
And I thought to myself, like,
you got to be kidding me, right?
You're a district manager and you want to make coffee for people,
right?
Like, whoa, where is this coming from? And I really maybe I should dig up and see whatever happened with this guy. But
you totally should.
But it shocked me that he would do this, mm-hmm. and it opened my eyes to the fact, because he was making great money, and he had this one problem account, but we were cleaning it up, and outside of that, everything else was running pretty smooth. Yeah. But it had no appeal to him, and so he gave it all up to open his little bistro.
That's gnarly, man.
And why? Boredom. To fight boredom.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, there's so much psychology behind this
yeah, this is your space.
I know. I should have done a little bit of research and found some peer-reviewed articles, and that's my nerdy side coming out, right?
Sure.
We could have cubicles next to each other, and yours would be the finance section, and mine would be the psychology, and we would just be happy as clams, right?
Pretty much.
But yeah, I mean, there's, oh my gosh, there's so much, there's a whole body of research on like, just that, like routine, these schedules and, you know, if you completely lay everything out for a person, then they go insane, basically, right? Like you cannot live in that existence for an extended, sustained period of time without completely just like giving up, right? Like you let go of your sense of self, you let go of any qualities or gifts. It's like you're psychologically lobotomizing yourself without going through the medical procedure, right?
Which is super interesting because as an entrepreneur, as a startup or a small business or a growing business, the advice is always to, get systems and, standard operating procedures and, figure out templates and how to, efficiently do things and to repeat that process over and over again. And that, that is what, an efficient growing business looks like. Is it's very repetitive. It's the same process, but it flies in the face of the personality of the entrepreneur who started that business in the first place.
Exactly.
So how do you cope with that?
And I think humanity at large, right? Like we live in a world today where we don't have problems. Not like we used to.
When you say we live in a world, I'm going to say in the United States we don't have problems. There are
Touché.
places in the world
Absolutely.
that legitimately have some issues that they're still struggling
You
with.
are correct.
But in the United States,
right,
as a society,
culturally,
we
don't.
Our basic needs are met
For the
very
most part.
well. And many other parts of the world, it's the same case.
Granted, I'm not devaluing human suffering, right?
Sure.
Like I know that exists a block from where we are currently, right? There's hunger happening, there's homelessness happening, there's all kinds of these things, these needs that aren't being met. But people will talk about, we're getting off the path a little bit here, but we'll come back. Just hang tight.
I'm hanging with you. I'm
right?
excited to see where you're taking this.
I mean, people will bring up world hunger and, we got to save world hunger. And if you just donate 17 cents to this cause, we'll feed so many people. And it's like, we're to the point now where we, as Americans, throw away food at a disgusting rate. And so food isn't, or world hunger isn't a quantity problem in terms of food. It's a distribution problem.
Correct.
Right? And so what I'm getting at is like, we got to look at the world in different ways. And the same thing happens in business. So, as our economy, as our society and civilization here in America, our culture has matured, then that's kind of what happens, right? Same thing happens in business. As a business matures and comes of age, that same kind of a thing happens. And the problems shift a little bit, but really it's like, hey, things are good and we could stay here and we can support all of these people's jobs and their families and their livelihoods and on and on and on. We don't have to change a thing, right? We can come up with all sorts of problems. We can, Stephanie and Jody over here bickering is, man, that's really bringing our whole team down and we got to fix that because gosh dang it.
Well, and that's the thing is, how many businesses out there are at a point where they are successful and they could just continually be successful?
Yeah, absolutely.
But they feel this need to grow,
to push on, right? Yeah. And you see that a lot of times where, like your friend, it gets to a point where somebody hits that wall and it's like, what am I doing this for? And then they step down and the next guy comes in because he has that ambition and he has that desire to take it to the next level or do the next thing or whatever. And he gets it there. And, maybe it takes 2 or 3 CEOs or 2 or 3 whatever to get it there, but eventually it'll get there. And then that guy's like, I'm going to go do something else. So, you know what I mean?
You know what's really interesting about this is that there are many businesses out there that the owners of the business would make significantly more money if they would sell the business than if they would grow the business.
Right.
Like, I've come across many owners that I'm like, right now, you could sell your business for, say, $5 million, and you would walk away with 2 of those 5.
Yeah.
And for $2 million, you could now, retire at a young age in style.
Right.
But you're not interested in that.
Right.
Like, that's not,
Right.
it gets past this point of, it's like, oh, I'm going to do the logical step in my business. It's like, no, I'm going to do the emotional step. And honestly, I'm not trying to downplay emotions. I think that's a mistake that happens a lot, is people are like, oh, emotional decisions are bad. And I'm like, no, emotional decisions are brilliant.
Right. We have emotions for a reason. Like, emotionality is valid. It's just a matter of, are we emotionally mature enough to understand why we're having that emotion,
right?
Where it comes from, why it's resonating in that way,
Yeah. And so, as a business owner, are we acting on emotion, or are we acting on, just the bottom dollar? And entrepreneurs, they're not bottom dollar driven most of the time. Right. Some are. Some people, they're just like, look, I'm all about the money, and that's what I want to do.
Right.
But most of them, I look at like serial entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to deviate here for a second, and I'm gonna bash on serial entrepreneurs.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
because
cool. Well, then we're gonna maybe disagree or present different opinions here, because I was actually gonna bring that up as a positive thing. So let's hear it.
Here's my bash
Put
on
your gloves
serial.
on.
I know.
I get the red gloves. You get the blue ones.
Here's my bash on serial entrepreneurs, and that is, to me, serial entrepreneur half the time is an excuse to say, I'm not successful at anything, so I bounce.
Okay.
I get that.
I can buy
so
that.
I'm like, oh, you're a serial entrepreneur. Wow,
Sure.
That's neat. So you sold your last business for $1 million. Oh, no, that one wasn't working out.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And the business before that, oh yeah, the market wasn't right for that. Okay.
Well, it wasn't really my business. It was my brother-in-law. I was just helping out. It's like, no.
So serial entrepreneur to me is code for immature, haven't grown up yet.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Yeah. Okay, I can bite off on that for sure.
Now, I will scale back, and there are some legitimate serial entrepreneurs out there.
Sure. Okay, so let me present the flip side of that.
Go
And
ahead.
I think actually at this point, I think maybe we both should have red boxing gloves on, because we're gonna like tag team this sucker.
Okay.
So I actually think it's really cool. So let me step back to, we talked about how, in this society, in this more mature society, and in a mature business, it's the same way again. We don't really have problems. We like to create our problems, because ultimately the human psyche has a big problem with freedom. And again, there's a whole body of research around it. I haven't done my preparation, so I can't quote anything specifically in terms of like peer-reviewed stuff. I swear on my life it's out there. If you're that into it, please dive into it.
Well done on doing your homework.
I know, right? Like, we're moving this guy. I'm a serial psychological researcher.
Yeah.
But we don't like freedom, right? And
We don't like freedom?
no, because here's the thing. Well, okay, think about it for a second. Like, answer me honestly. If all of a sudden you had all of the land in the world, like the entire world was yours,
okay.
You had the subservience of every person, if you had all the money and riches and
so
access
I'm
to
king
resources,
of the world.
like 100%,
Okay.
day one, you're stoked, right?
Sure.
Day 17,554. You're probably bashing your head up against a wall, just hoping you're going to die with the next one. Like, we get so bored, right?
Yeah.
Like, once we have everything, like, we like problems, right? I'm coming back to like this, the entrepreneurs, like, that they get to that point in their career where they're like, hey, this is not meeting my needs. This is boring to me, right? Like at one point it was like, yeah, I like this challenge. Like I've never been a general manager before or a district manager. Like, cool, let's see what this experience brings and whatever. And then it's like you get into the rut of it and same old in and out. And it's the same thing. You just start hitting your head up against a wall because you've had the 10,000th person come into your office and be like, boss, I got an idea. You're like, please. Tell me so I can take a nap.
So
talk me to sleep here.
I worked with a consultant, 100% true here. He got out of consulting because he was falling asleep because he was so bored.
Yeah.
When people would come and talk to him.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like we as human beings shy away from that. And so
So that's interesting. I wouldn't use the word freedom
so that's
as you did. That's
so
why
there,
it confused me. But when you talk
sure.
about boredom, I relate better.
So okay. Good qualification. So I'm actually going to look it up really quick while we're talking. But I believe that I can't remember if there's a book or a whole
okay. So
body
I'm
of research.
going to give you.
It's called The Problem of Freedom or The Problem with Freedom.
So I'm going to give you a chance to look that up because there's something that I want to talk about. So I'm going to rant here for a second.
Sorry,
go ahead.
Let me before you dive into that. Let me
we're all over the board.
I know it's cool. So I think it's really cool that we're to the point that we are in history because we are seeing people like Seth Godin is. If you don't know who Seth Godin is, he's a world-renowned marketer, brilliant guy, but he has looked at his life and his career as not a series of jobs or a progression in his career, but as a series of projects, right? And he advocates like in terms of teaching kids and even in yourself, it's like find an interesting problem and find a way to solve it, right? And that's kind of what he's done through his career. Is like he takes on this project and it's interesting to him. He solves the problem and then he moves on to the next problem. And he's kind of just happenstance kind of stayed in this vein of quote unquote what we call marketing. And so we know him as this marketing guru, but to him, it's just like he's been bouncing around doing what he finds to be interesting. And we're kind of to that point, right?
Oh, okay.
And that's what I'm calling like a serial entrepreneur. So Seth Godin has gone through several different things and been incredibly successful.
But here's the challenge and here's the counter side. And this is what I want to warn against. So our listeners out there who are like, see, these guys are telling me I'm good to bounce. I'm good to pivot. I'm good to zigzag. I'm like, yes.
Once you've made $5 million, yes, please.
So there's a concept in business, the product life cycle. And I'm going to describe it, but if you want a visual, just look it up. It's very common. So you got the product life cycle. And basically what it is a product is going to start with a very innovative early adopter stage. And what will happen is, it's if you think of like a new technology, it's going to come out, it's going to be a little clunky. And the people who have to have it are going to jump on board. Think of cell phones when they first came out. They were these huge, expensive bricks that didn't work very well, and people were willing to pay for it because they wanted it. Then it will go through kind of this, this refinement stage, and a lot of times they'll call it the shakeout, where you'll have hundreds, thousands of businesses come in to try and solve this problem.
Yeah.
And they're perfecting the product or the service.
And you see an incredible amount of iterations from this guy and that guy, and one little feature different and this feature.
Yeah, and at first it's leaps and bounds changes, but then it starts to kind of hone in. And they call it the shakeout because it goes from like 100 people who are trying to solve this problem down to a half a dozen people who really
do it really well.
Yeah, do a good job, and that's who we adopt as the as the provider for that product. The interesting phase to me is the maturity phase. That's the next phase. So once these half a dozen people have survived the shakeout, they're now in this maturity phase. And at that phase is where most of the money is made. And so if you're running a business and you're looking at, your products, if they're in the maturity phase, then you're making lots of money for little effort. The ROI, the return on investment, is, it's most profitable at that maturity phase. And then you go into a decline where, it starts to go out of fashion, or there's a new technology that has, surpassed it, or whatever the case may be. Now, that's a quick overview of the product life cycle, but this is what I want to tie into. The maturity phase is boring. The shakeout phase and the early adopter phase, the innovative stuff, is fun.
Yeah.
But if you don't ride the idea out through, if you do a premature decline, then you end up being one of those who fade away in that shakeout phase. And entrepreneurs do this. Okay, so this is the product life cycle, but this same cycle happens with ideas. It happens with processes. It happens with our emotions, our desires. Is when something is new and exciting, we're all about it, but we're still trying to figure things out. And then when you go into kind of this mature phase, and you think to yourself, oh man, this is not as exciting as it used to be, and it gets boring.
Yeah.
But it gets profitable.
Right.
And so as an entrepreneur, can you handle the boredom long enough to reap in all of the profits? Yeah. And that's a challenging thing, and that takes discipline. And I am an advocate for that. I think that if you're bouncing early, if you're a serial entrepreneur who keeps, you never make it to the maturity phase, you're always stuck in the, those early adopter and those shakeout phases, then you're just getting left behind. You're not accomplishing the goal all the way to the end.
Right. And that can take place in different ways, right? Like, as if you are the guy, down in the trenches doing the dirty work, and you're a solopreneur at the beginning, like, as that grows, you don't have to stay that guy.
But you want to.
You want to.
A lot of times.
Sure. But then, okay, so say even you do, and then it comes through that shakeout phase and it starts to get into the maturity phase. Do you still have to stay the CEO? Do you still have to stay the president or the guy at the top doing all of the things?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so this
right?
This is super interesting. When I started working with businesses, I started noticing some trends, and so I would use all the businesses that were coming to me and that I was able to consult with as kind of my little laboratory. And one of the things that I found out that there are, generally speaking, 3 management styles. Okay. And I relate it to a house. Though there are those who like to build a new house, there are those that like to remodel an existing house, and then there are those who like to live in a skyscraper.
Yeah.
And what it is it's startups, it's managers, and it's CEOs. And there's not one that's better than the other. It's not different. It's not a progression. In fact, you will not progress from a startup to a manager to a CEO. You will have one that you're good at, maybe 2, but usually there's only one that you're good at.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, even if you do have 2, one of them is prevalent over the other.
Yeah. See, I'm a manager. I'm decent at startups. I understand the CEO side of things, but I'm a manager. Like that's where my space is. That's why I love small business so much, is because small businesses need managers. Big corporations, they need CEOs. Now, don't get caught up on, you might have a small business that's like, well, I'm the CEO of my small business. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like your what big multinational CEO that, you've got 50,000 employees type positions.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, like, you identify that by what type of work it is that you excel at and like to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Where's
not
your talent?
Yeah. It's not. Well, it's like coming back to the houses. It's like I could see myself enjoying, building a house, but I'm really good at remodeling.
That's how I am.
So
I like to fix things. I go in and I can see what's going on, and I'm like, oh, we can make this better.
Exactly. And that is like, I feel like that encapsulates this whole episode really, really well, because it's like you as an entrepreneur, like your style, you could make something better. And then if you just had to sit with that, you'd get really bored with it.
Yeah.
Even if it looked like pristine, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you're going to be looking at that and be like, I got to change it.
Yeah.
I'm going to move out of here. I'm going to go do this, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So true. All right. Did you find your study?
I did. So sorry. I'll just throw it out there really quick. It's along the, it's from Eric Fromm. He's the prominent researcher here. But it's really just regarding the psychological side of freedom. And it's the paradox of freedom, not the problem with freedom. I apologize. Look into it if you're interested. There's some interesting stuff there. Mostly it has to do with like society, dictatorships versus like democracy. I don't know.
And do you promise to do your homework next time?
Yeah, we just have to decide a little bit beforehand. Give me a heads up. Maybe we'll do a follow-up episode to this where I will just dive into unbelievable amounts of research and people will be sleeping and skipping.
And if there's anything that the listeners out there, if you guys want us to do some homework on some stuff, please let us know. Reach out to us. You can find us www.marketingmanagementmoney.com. Just contact us and say, hey, do your homework on this, or fact check us.
Right?
If
people right now are like, Eric Fromm, sucker. Like, look it up, man. I'm sorry.
But we appreciate you tuning in. And just remember that boredom and money they coincide. And so if you're a little bit bored with what you're doing and you're making good money, that's great. If you want something a little bit more exciting, it's a roller coaster and sometimes you sacrifice some money. Just pick where you want to be.
A bistro.
Next time.
Ciao.